Hello and welcome to Traction Talks. I'm Kieran James, your host for today, and I am the founder of and CEO of Stride Accountancy, and we run on EOS. I'm joined by Kelvin, who is Master of the Universe.
Apparently, I'm Master of the Universe, yes.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Kelvin.
Yeah, I'm actually Kelvin, founder of 2080. We are I call it a fractional finance firm here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So that just means that we help people with bookkeeping, accounting compliance, tax returns, managerial accounting, fractional controllership, fractional CFO. I believe we really have a good specialty around the advisory piece. So for us, that means the fractional CFO, fractional controllership work, helping people build their own visions, their own strategies, their own financial models, their own business plans, all of that kind of fun stuff.
Well, so this episode, Kelvin, we're going to be talking around the vision component of EOS. Hopefully, if you're listening, you've listened to the first podcast and you've got a bit of an idea about what EOS actually is, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's broken into 6 components. This is the first podcast looking at that vision component, and we're just going to delve and find out a bit more about Kelvin's story within that, his views and thoughts around it, and just explore that together. So I guess my first question, Kelvin, is talk to us about your journey. What does EOS mean to you and your journey so far with that? Just a bit of an idea.
Yeah. So for me, EOS, to be clear, we don't follow ES fully. So we can probably get into that a bit later, but I'm a huge believer in what EOS stands for, the basics of it, creating structure, systems, process, an operating system. I also am a firm believer in the E-Myth and a whole bunch of other books. So E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which truly is probably the foundation of a lot of these business operating systems. So, work on your business, not in it. Very good book. And really that all came about from when we started 2080 about 11 years ago. We grew extremely fast, like extremely rapidly. We were one of the leaders of cloud accounting here in Canada, Western Canada specifically. Took off like a rocket ship and then got stuck in the business. And we didn't even know it at that point in time. And so, we were the prototypical working long hours, burnt out, not a lot of time, making okay money, but not great money. And probably if we truly looked at what we were doing, not actually liking it, but taking a lot of risk, meaning, you're the business owner, it's all on your shoulders. If you don't meet payroll, you got to make that up. Sleepless nights, cash flow problems, all of that kind of stuff.
It's a common story for a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%, which is why I'm a huge believer of it. Because then you look at that trajectory, and about 3 or 4 years ago, we finally started saying, okay, we need to practice what we actually preach, and started implementing a lot of systems and processes and change and working on the business more than in it, at least for myself specifically. And it's been game changing. Like I cannot stress enough how game changing it can be. So even though we are not full EOS people, we do follow a lot of the structure. And, I'm a firm believer that every single business out there should be using something similar to that, if not EOS itself.
You said it's game changing. Can you get a bit more specific on that? So tell me, what fundamentally are tangibly, what's been the difference for you?
Well, to me, it's not tangible, right? It's more the subjective fluffy. So everything that I described where it's like sleepless nights, stress, working too much in the business, not really knowing it, not truly enjoying what you're doing. I mean, enjoying it. You like what you're doing, but you're not loving it. And it feels really hard. And that's why I say it's not tangible, because those are all emotional descriptions that I just described. And the game changing is we have none of that. Like after implementing proper systems, processes, structured plans, and execution, because that's a huge piece of any EOS type system is actual follow through. The results have been game changing, just in the sense that, I can go to bed at night, work still happens. I've got team members that take care of stuff. We've got plans and processes around all of it. We've got a very strong vision and roadmap about why we are different and what we want to do. And that then permeates into the team for culture. So we've got really great team members. I had a talk actually recently for a zero session where there's a talent shortage around the world for CPAs and finance industry, but I'm not experiencing that. And the reason that is, I believe, is because we've got an extremely strong vision, which then sets the culture, which then attracts a lot of really great talent And we've got a lot of great systems and processes to help educate that talent, let them carry out their work, and just actually provide them with opportunity as well as actual people. So they're not just being used as, robots to cram out tax returns and data punch and. So it's completely game changing in that sense. We are truly running a business as opposed to Kelvin is just running a sole proprietorship with one or two admins and flaming himself out in, 1 or 2 decades.
That's quite important. That idea that you're running it as a business, because often, it's very, very possible that when you start to set up your own practice as an accountant and then you build from that you can lean away from running creating a true business out of it and have it as more of a, you become the doer, the person delivering the work, and you just have people that are effectively building a triangle below you to spend less time delivering less lower level, value work. So you've said a little bit, you've kind of hinted that with EOS, you're not using all of it, but what of the vision? So in EOS terms, we obviously have what would be called the Vision Traction Organizer, which is a set of 8 questions, the VTO, a set of 8 questions, which will identify, sort of ask certain questions about the business. So what are you using then in terms of that, and how does that, what are you taking that's pure EOS? What are you doing?
Yeah. So I think for myself, introduction to EOS for me was the book Traction by Gino Wickman. That's probably how a lot of people got introduced to it. And I found it really heavy. So I know now, having gone through my journey, doing psychological assessments and, understanding who I am as a person and foundationally, the reason it didn't resonate with me is just how I think. And so I shouldn't say it didn't resonate with me. It did resonate with me. It was just hard for me to read. And I found that with a lot of people that we work with as well, where they'll pick up Traction and they find it very heavy and hard to do and hard to implement.
Did you listen or did you read?
Well, and that's a very good question. So, for myself, I read through it and I just found it hard. And so I wasn't really paying as much attention as I should have, but that was part of the problem, is I couldn't fully engage myself. And so, part of that was, again, the feeling of heaviness. But then when I look at specifically, say, the VTO, look at the VTO and the way that it's structured, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you know more about EOS than I do, but it's more of, I feel like Traction is built for bigger companies. And the reason I say that is when you look at the VTO, it says, okay, look at your company, look at your leadership team, and start reverse engineering what your culture is.
And we could just contextualize that in Kelvin. So how big is your team at the moment?
So we are now 16 people.
16 people. And you started implementing parts of the EOS at what size? 3 people. Okay. Yeah. So
frame of reference, that was 3 years ago.
So, okay. Wow. Well done. That's cracking. So EOS, the way it's projected is that a business turning over 2 million and above, or 10 staff and above, is really what it's geared towards. It is quite interesting though, because we're a team of 8. So I get that idea of, what ends up happening is you set this vision, you've got this idea, but actually in a smaller team, it does add some challenges and complexities that can't always be as pure, because by nature of it, you can't have this big leadership team, etc. So did you use those 8 questions that are things like, in fact, should we run through those 8 questions? So we've got your core values. So you're using those ones? Okay. So we'll run through them quickly for people listening, and then we'll maybe just delve into that a little bit. So then the next one is around your core focus. What is your purpose and what is the niche around your business? Then your marketing strategy, which has your sort of who your target market is, what you do differently. Do you have a proven way of doing that? Yeah. And then we're getting into sort of your 3-year picture and what's that really looking at? Yeah. So are you using all of the components?
Yes. Yeah.
So
we are using the components of the VTO, but then where I found it kind of fell off the rails a bit was in terms of the true vision piece. And so what I mean by that is, again, to your point, like EOS is typically built for what I would say larger businesses, 2 million plus. It's great for those businesses, and it's great for reverse engineering what your culture and what your vision is, what you're all about. I believe that businesses on the smaller end of that range, meaning $0 probably up to like 5 million to 10 million, they're probably more intricately tied to their founder than we truly appreciate or realize. Meaning in 2080, the vision is me. And so trying to implement traction was very hard for us in the truest sense, because not only were there not enough team members, but also even when we did have enough team members, the vision still ultimately came down to me. So when I say we don't use it fully, we're still implementing everything that you said, but we've got a stronger focus on unpacking Kelvin's vision, what that means for the actual company, and then turning it into something, because part of EOS is unpacking the person from the business. And so taking that and truly starting to unpack it in a way that is meaningful for the rest of the team.
So is that something you be comfortable sharing where you've got to with that at the moment?
Yeah. So for me, it's a lot more personal introspection, right? So it's from bringing the vision piece, it's really truly unpacking what that means at the individual level for the business owner. So there's a concept of the vivid vision by Cameron Herold. So it's a very good way to paint a picture of your business vision. So one other way to think about that is actually do that for your personal self. So when you use it in the business context, what does your business feel like in 3 to 5 years? Who are you impacting? How are you doing things? What does your team culture look and feel like? What do your clients think about you? It's also really good to think about that on the personal side. Like you as a human, what do you want to do? How do your kids view you? How does your spouse or your life partner view you? What does that look like? What's your familial relationships like? Do you go outside and, in Canada right now, ski because it's, there's lots of snow? What does it mean to you to be you, essentially? So unpacking that a lot more. So we have a vivid vision concept for the person, but then we also use other tools like a lifeline. So a lifeline is a tool that basically says you're born on day 0, you die usually on average at age 81. That's the average age for everybody in the planet. And you map out your whole journey through life of significant events, either positive or negative. And you do that. So I'm 47. So I did that from 47 to 81. Also to gain introspective around what do I want to do later in life. So that's just another tool to dig into me. As part of that, we also recommend people doing a eulogy.
Yeah.
And that one to me is very interesting because it's like, okay, if I was to die today, what would people say about me? Or what do I think people would say to me? And then what would I actually want them to say about me? So there's all these different things that we're doing that are unpacking me as a person more. There's a few other ones that we use, like signature stories and point of view, which is a concept from Playing Bigger. And all of it is intended to unpack me as a person, meaning the business owner, and why we believe what we do. Why did we start our business truly? Like, who do we want to impact, how and why? Which then ties into everything in the VTO in terms of your core values, your focus, your not your rocks, because those are the smaller ones. Those are your 3-year goals, your one, and then your rocks. It all flows into that. It's just digging into the personal human side more, because I believe for smaller businesses, you actually need that.
It's really interesting that you talk a lot about yourself there, because I'm trying to think about my interpretation of EOS. And I know that when you go to the EOS conferences in the UK, for example, one of the organizations that's almost always there is Strategic Coach. You always sit alongside it, Dan Sullivan, and Strategic Coach very much focuses on similar sort of things to what you're talking about here, which is very much your personal stuff. In that, I myself, I've got my own coaching process around the same sort of thing. So it's definitely something that I think I can see what you're saying in terms of the importance of, you've got to know you can't lead your business and direct your business on a vision if you don't know where your vision's going, because you have to know where you want to be. As a sole founder or a very small team, you're definitely going to be the predominant guidance on that. It's very linked to your personal life. Whereas as you scale as a business, that might be less attached to a human person, more attached to where the business is going as a unit. I guess still led by shareholders and influencing parties in that. So but you're still effectively using, after doing that initial sort of exercise, you're effectively using the US True and Pure on the other side of it.
Yes. So we don't use technically like the VTO to the T, but we still do all the same stuff. We just typically call it different things, different acronyms, things that are meaningful to us. And we present it in different ways. So instead of having the scorecard, I'd
love your thoughts on something then, because so this isn't a slight on marketing companies, by the way, but we've had a lot of times where we've rebranded And as part of it, you go to a marketing company and they help you with your vision. I think there are probably some marketing companies that can really truly help you with that. But I guess the ones we've been to haven't been those companies to be able to do that. So what you do is you end up creating with them, you have cards and you do all these exercises, you create some great values for the business, stick them up on a board, and then they're on that board and that's it. And then we hit AOS and we had this moment where for the first time ever, the values we set felt right intuitively. They were part of the business and our staff started holding each other to account to those values and going, yeah, but that's not doing this. Striving for excellence. That's not this. So have you found, what's been your impression of the core value or your version of it, core value approach, and how that's affected your business?
I think what you just described, exactly summarize my experience. You go to some of these again, we work with marketing firms too, and the ones that we work with are quite good. But, I'm talking over my 11-year journey. We've run into some not very good ones. And when you go through the exercises that you described, you come out of it more confused than ever around what you're supposed to do. And then you read some books and you're supposed to summarize your vision and your mission and your why in one sentence. That's why I like the concept of vivid vision, because it's an actual description and a feeling and an emotion, which again ties to me and my personality style much more than just, can I summarize it in one line? It's like, that's actually really hard to do, but I know what we stand for and I know why. And it is super impactful to your point, because as soon as you're able to describe that, so we describe it through a vivid vision. And to be quite frank, I'm revising it even this week. I'm going through some of the stuff that I have. I'm enhancing it, I guess, like people know what our vision is, but I'm making it even stronger and more emotive, more emotional.
Because have you got that in a sentence now then, or?
I haven't got the sentence down yet. I'm still trying to unpack that one sentence that truly defines what we are versus and where we're going versus, say, other people. I'm starting to hone in on it, but to me, that vivid vision is more important because people can read that one pager and have an extremely good grasp about why we're doing what we're doing and how we're impacting our clients and what that means for them as people.
What you've nailed is that vision is more than just a sentence, isn't it? It's got, yes, you put words on a paper, but there's something more important than just simply putting it down. Our vision has got very much like a monetary value to it of where we want to be in terms of our size, but then it's very much the kind of next bit is around the types of clients we work with, the staff quality, and the services we deliver. So kind of combining that full remit of, it's not just about gross, it's about having clients that are exceptional and we work with, which basically means we like them, they're good clients, they fit our psychographics, the kind of softer feelings and beliefs about themselves.
Mindset.
Yeah, but exactly. Perfect. Yeah, it's kind of the types of people that can work with the US, really, isn't it? It's funny. Yeah. And then, but also it's got a little bit about the types of staff we're going to deal with, because equally, it's got to be quality staff, etc. So I think, I guess we kind of come back from different angles, but it feels like to me when I'm hearing you, we kind of ending up in the same place, which is when we read that, although the words are general words that if somebody outside the business might not fully understand, because when we articulate, we know what that means, and we could probably describe 5 sentences around what those 2 words mean of like exceptional client. We know we could all describe that, and we're all thinking the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's quite.
I would agree with that because again, going back to my point, again, I look at EOS the book traction. I just felt like it was heavy. I found a different journey, but I still ended up at the same place. And so that's kind of my slant on EOS. And probably one of the messages I would like to deliver today, which is, even if you're finding EOS hard, it's extremely valuable. Like, I come back to the foundational level basics of the system is have a plan, work towards it, execute. That's it. And you would know, you work with businesses just like I do. If there's one failing that people have, it's having these dreams and then doing nothing about it. And so it's having the vision firstly, but then actually executing and actioning towards that vision. That's super key. And so my message here would be, even if you found traction and EOS heavy, you can still create it in very different ways and it'll feel lighter for you. And I think that boils down to the personality and who you are as a person, like, to use your word, like psychologically.
I think there's two things I can take from that. The first is that, so I read a lot of books. I'm sure lots of people here, but when I say I read, what I really mean is I stick them on Audible and listen in the car, right? And like one thing I did find with Traction is that's not the kind of book you can do that with. It really isn't the kind of book you mentioned earlier about you kind of didn't take it in. You really have to sit down and almost use it as like what's the word? You used to get as a manual, that's the word. So you used to get like your car manual, you go through it, I'll fix that bit. I think that if as a book, you need to use it like that, especially around this sort of area. I guess the second thing you highlight is EOS is difficult, but I guess, and maybe you can tell me how your thoughts on this, but it's difficult because it requires growth from you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a very valid point.
And growth is always difficult, right? So
change is hard.
So I think it's supposed to be difficult, but is it worth it? I guess that's the question, isn't it? Is it worth it?
Well, and I would come back to, it's game changing, because ultimately what you're saying is true. Like, we are essentially using EOS, even though we're not following the Bible. And that's why I always preface it by saying, if you're a true 100% EOSer, if you talk to me, there's going to be some differences, period. But we're probably like 90 something percent there. Reality is it's game changing. So using that stuff is game changing. So even though it might feel hard, and I agree with everything that you said, which is it requires some personal change, especially from leadership. And in my case, the founder, because I was the guy, the person. And so if I was never going to change, we as a team were never going to change. Like, that it's obvious just in what I said, why that would be the case. And so that's why I use the term journey. It has been a true journey in terms of learning more about, I take psychological assessments about myself. It's not because I think I'm crazy. It's because I actually want to lean into my strengths and support my weaknesses. And the only way I can do that is by learning more what things mean to me, why I interpret and process things that I do. And that in of itself is a journey. And so it's all about personal growth and change.
What assessment do you use for that?
Honestly, we use Kolbe quite a bit.
So it's the EOS assessment.
So
EOS promoted assessment.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And I absolutely love it. There's a consultant here in Canada that's one of the top in the world, I believe, Warren Barry. So shout out to Warren. He's an amazing guy, and the stuff that he has taught me around Kolbe, how it can be used, how to build teams, how to leverage it myself. So going back to personal growth, I use him as a monthly coach. So I meet with him once a month and just talk to him about how we can build our team in different ways, utilize Kolbe assessments in different ways, both for myself and my team, putting people in the, right people in the right seats, make sure that that's a thing. And the reason that I say that is because as you grow, it is actually shocking how true Kolbe assessments become, meaning you try to put, say, somebody with a certain Kolbe profile into, say, a bookkeeping role, and they start underperforming relative to what we want, our standards. And it ultimately comes down to the Kolbe in terms of we hired the wrong person for the right role. Like, because Kolbe, for people that are not, it digs down into your subconscious, like how are you innately born and how do you act? It's not to say that you can't do things. It's just saying that sometimes you feel like you're hitting your head against the wall because you are, because there's a certain way that you believe and you want to work. And if you're working against it, it just feels hard. And so that's why I say Traction to me it was hard for me, because on a Kolbe scale, I am a 10 on visionary and a 2 on everything else.
10 on visionary. Wow.
I'm extreme.
You're at the extreme of this.
I am very extreme. Like, I am very rare. But that's why Traction for me was hard, because it's a technical manual and I don't think that way.
So let's highlight to people then a little bit around that. So what a term visionary actually means then. So visionary is the type of person who has a ton of ideas, is really enthusiastic, probably pull the business from this way to this way to this way to this way, doesn't like detail orientated stuff, generally is a great leader, not necessarily, management is a learning process. Anything else you want to add?
What you're trying to say. Yeah, no, so you've got fact finding, follow through, visionary, and integrator, I do believe is the fourth one. I always kind of forget that one because it's more tactile, tangible. Like, if you're in construction and you like to touch things, you're going to have a high value there, which is not normal in our industry. So it's usually quite low. I'm a very low fact finder, very low follow through, extremely high visionary. So the way that you would describe me truly is a fire starter. I am a chaos creator. I will come in and I will change everything like that because I believe it's the best way to do it. but then I will follow through on none of it. And so that is hugely important because, coming back to using systems like EOS, it's all about creating a vision, a plan, action, follow through. If I'm a chaos creator, I am not naturally geared for that last step, which means I then need to hire people that can help me to do that.
So in your structure at the moment, we'll come back to this, okay? So let's just keep on vision for a little bit longer. So on the visionary side of things, you've got one kind of key component of EOS is you go through these 8 questions so you understand where your business is at, where it fits in the marketplace, what you stand for, those types of things. But at some point, as you do that all as a leadership team, and then you've got to take it from that point to share it with the team. And there's a really great blog on EOS's website, which is shared by all, not shared with all.
Yeah.
And the idea that it's like everyone agrees, it's not just people are hearing what you're saying, they genuinely believe, understand, and are moving your vision forward. So where do you feel you sit on that continuum, and where do you, between those two, and what do you feel has worked well to get you further towards the shared by all? Because it's never black and white, is it? But what
totally
helped you move towards that?
I would rank ourselves like a 5 out of 10 on that scale, to be candid, because I believe it's hard, especially when you're high growth. So again, coming from the standpoint in the last 3 to 4 years, we've grown from 3 people to 15, and we should be at 16 based off what's in the pipeline. And so we are high growth right now. So it's hard to share that vision all the time because everybody's new. You get on calls, sometimes it's like, who is this person? And we are still a small team, so it's obviously not that bad, but sometimes it feels that way. But the biggest thing for us was actually having vision meetings. So actually sitting down every couple months and actually conveying, like doing a presentation, a conversation, a town hall, if you will, around the vivid vision that I described. Like, what are we doing and what does that mean to us as a team? What does that mean to the team members personally around what they can do for their own professional satisfaction? Because I'm a very big believer on engagement and storytelling. And so what that means is that a marketer would say, what's in it for them? But to me, that almost is like a negative derogatory term, meaning you're trying to hook somebody and utilize it. It's like, no, what we're trying to do is get our team members on our journey, on our path. Like, my vision for the team and our leadership team is, how can we impact 400 to 500 people, meaning businesses? And by impact, we mean the advisory side. So how can we do the antithesis of what the accounting and bookkeeping industry is, which is shoebox, file returns, done, never talk to you. And I mean that in the nicest way. Like, that's an overgeneralization because this industry is so full of really talented people, but they're typically trained on what we call here in North America, the big 4 ways, meaning you're working for the KPMGs, the Deloittes, great companies, but they're extremely structured and traditional. And what I believe businesses want or need, or at least the people that we're talking in the 0, say, to 20, 30 million in revenue range, what they truly want to do is hire somebody internally that they can walk down the hallway, open the door, and talk to them about their business, but they can't afford it. And so we're trying to fill that gap in the middle around how can the business owner actually get that with somebody and truly understand that. So that's a very different vision than the industry as a norm. It's probably highly similar to Stride, I would guess, but there's very few Strides and 2080s in the world. It's probably like less than 5% of the planet is trying to do what we are trying to do. So the best way for us to communicate that is to walk them through that vision, just have a meeting around it with the team. We're virtual in Canada, so across Canada. So we join virtually and just talk through the vision. People are welcome to ask questions and then follow up. Because going back to the personal
just to
change,
clarify, you're sharing that vision with your actual clients, every client meeting, as part of that client meeting. So obviously you've said about your team, you're doing that every couple of months, but with your clients, so you're doing that with them as well?
We do with our clients in terms of sales and discovery, meaning when we're sitting down and we're going through the discovery process, Kelvin, why should I hire you guys? This is why, and I actually use that business owner analogy where it's like, I know you want to hire somebody. Like, you'd be an idiot not to. I'm like, who would not want to hire somebody that they can just have fully at their disposal? They'll understand the business. They will know it inside out. They'll work proactive. If they're good, they will work for you. So using a tax analogy, walk down the hall, open the door. It's like, hey, Johnny, did you do that tax return? Oh yeah, man, I had it. I paid it. We're good. Also, I noticed X, Y, Z. Like, that's what a business owner wants. But when they go to traditional firms, it's like, here's my shoebox. Could you please do my tax return at some point? Question mark. And then there's a whole communication chain that probably falls apart afterwards. And
You know
so
what?
it's a very different experience. So we discuss that up front as a sales strategy.
I think it's lovely that you've kind of not only is that lovely for your clients, you've articulated that journey, because I think you're absolutely right, by the way, Kelvin. But I think that the fact that you're discussing that, you're effectively almost qualifying whether they also see your vision. Because interestingly, you mentioned all the things you're mentioning are actually US tenants. You know, do you share your vision with your clients?
So I can start saying I follow EOS then.
The terminology is different. So you called it a town hall. In the US, it will be a state of the company. And the very first meeting would be called a core values speech. That's the one. So we call it a core values speech. So you are using the tenets of EOS. But the terminology clearly is using your own version. Do you know what's really interesting? I'm going to drift a little bit, Kelvin, but I just think it might be fascinating for people to understand this. So the first business system we know of is a Toyota production system, which is only really a production system, not a full business system. And then some large businesses took that and went, there's the Danaher business system and some other ones, and like Tesco's. But at that level, companies of hundreds of millions to billions of pounds, they make their own version. And the reason they do that is because it's complex. It takes a lot of time. You've got to create your own internal language. And as you come down from that, you kind of grab and pull from different places, and you can kind of create one based on tagging a lot of different things together. That's effectively what you've done. You've done the bit below that of a business probably a lot larger than yours, maybe a like 80, 100, 200 million business who has pulled down the bits that they like and put it together. So whereas I think my understanding of EOS is it's almost that's the level down where I haven't got time to go and I have all these ideas and pull all these things together myself. I just need a framework I can use. Obviously, there's a point where you're too small, as we've kind of articulated, where actually even EOS probably isn't right. It's probably something like the lean startup method or something like that, you know, where actually there's a different methodology potentially at that level that's more innovation driven than it is structure driven.
But they still all boil down to the same thing. And so, you know, the reason that I've probably taken that journey, you know, and I think it's actually a very interesting point, and I'll have to pull this back and think about it and, you know, mentally process it, see how I can grow from it. Because I'm a chaos creator, because that's what I do. I look at what everybody else is doing and I try to figure out how I could do it better or something. It's not natural for me to take somebody else's framework and implement it. It's not to say that there's no value in it. Again, preface all of that by saying all of this stuff is game changing. And you're outwardly telling me that I'm basically doing what EOS is saying, just in different ways. So it's my own slant and my own flavor to it. So, you know, you still get there in the same way. But that still comes back to the psychological piece, which is I'm not naturally born to sit down with that book. And if it felt heavy to me, and that's it. So because it felt heavy, my brain went to, I need to find a different way. So that's why I started grabbing and changing and doing things differently. So even though you ended up at the same spot.
Yeah. So obviously as a chaos creator, then how do you create sort of a single unified direction for the business that you can kind of, because you're the person, you're dragging the business forward, driving the business forward, right? So, and obviously you're fast growing. So 3 to 16 in 3 years, that's a decent, for a lot of people, that's a decent growth rate.
It's a bit uncomfortable, yes.
Yeah. And growth generally means messiness and all that kind of stuff. So what do you think? So I guess there's two questions. The first question is, how do you keep that vision shared on track and make sure you're actually all moving as a single, you're rowing in the same direction? How do you make sure you're rowing in the same direction? What things have you got in place? What things are you doing to make sure that's unified?
Yeah. So this is where I would start taking more hard, fast approaches to EOS. So we've got an accountability chart. So we have a true accountability chart where I've got defined roles and positions and plans for how those roles are supposed to carry out, tied to the ultimate vision.
So we're going to talk about that in the next episode if people are listening. They don't know what accountability chart is. We'll get into the details in the next episode as well. So listen to the next one, next people.
Yeah, it's super useful. Honestly, we get a lot of our clients. We try to get a lot of our clients to do accountability charts as well, for that very reason, because it starts solidifying, especially for someone like myself, who is a chaos creator, very low follow through. If I was to continue doing what we had done on what I call version 1 of 2080, we would go nowhere, because I would continually think of new ideas and never do anything about them. But that's why Colby was so effective, because it highlighted that I was thinking the way that I did and what I needed to do to counterbalance that, meaning I needed somebody with very strong fact-finding follow-through tendencies and lower visionary, or basically the yin and yang of myself, in order to counterbalance me. So I would create all these crazy ideas. I'd throw it to that person, and that person would tell me to go F myself. And, they would like to keep things the same because that's their nature. And through, constructive conflict is what I like to call it, you come up to the happy medium and you figure out what works in terms of driving towards that vision, but in a sustainable, non-chaos creating way. So it's all about structuring the people around the vision. And that's where the Colby piece is really useful, is finding the right people in the right seats, and myself knowing my weak points as a business owner so that I knew who those right people were in the right seats to counterbalance myself and what I'm good at. I find, probably segueing a bit here, but I find what's really interesting about going through that whole process is it really lights you up, to steal a term from, it's not Dan Sullivan, it's, I'm drawing a blank. He created the book, Buying Back Your Time, Dan Martell. He's got amazing concepts around buying back your time. And there's one in there. It's a whole framework around trying to figure out what you truly want to do. And I find once you start leaning into accountability charts, finding the right people to help drive your vision, putting people in the right seats, it actually starts enhancing, it starts lighting you up in terms of you start really honing in on what it is that you like to do. So for myself, I love doing stuff like this. I love getting out there. I love talking, to your point on what a high visionary is, chaos creator. You get out there, you're typically energetic. It's early in the morning for me, so not right now. I need about 8 more coffees and then I'm go, 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 go. But I find I can lean into that way heavier now because I've got the accountability chart. I built the structure underneath me properly. The analogy I use jokingly, and I should stop using it because my team hates it because they're not me, they're the opposite of me, is I jam all of the leads down their throat, and they're extremely good at taking it, processing it in our ways and our standards and our vision, and distributing it across the group and driving forward. And so that's why I say once it's game changing in the sense that even if you take that analogy, I'm now allowed to do what lights me up. These people are doing what lights them up. They might not like it all the time, how slow they're going, but together as a unit, we are driving forward in a much more flow state. And it just feels way, way easier than what it used to. And that's why I say it's game changing. It absolutely is.
I guess I've got, before we wrap this up, one final question, which is, what has been the biggest challenge in putting all of these different components together? Because obviously they are all, in US terms, they're the VTO. In your terms, there's a lot of different things, but either way, it's the same sort of unified outcome that you've ended up with. What has been the challenge in that, especially your growth rate? By the way, I feel like we could talk a lot about that journey, which we haven't even touched on. But yes. So maybe if I could squeeze another question afterwards, but what do you think has been the biggest challenge around?
To be honest, I would say there's multiple challenges. The biggest thing for me, it was really honing in on that key vision. Again, for me, it was so important because it sets the stage for everything else. When I kind of look back on the last 3 to 4 years and the game changingness, as I would put it, team culture has played a huge part of that. So getting those right people in the right seats and getting engagement, meaning figuring out how we can help them progress as people, meaning their personal lives, not just professionally. And I think there's still loads of work that we could do in that regard, because I think people are the biggest asset.
Is there anything you're comfortable sharing around that?
Yeah, I could. But before I do that, that all hinges on, if you don't know where you're going, how can you even talk about that? And so going back to our conversation pieces around, you read these books and it's you need a tagline like Nike, just do it. And that's your vision. It's well, I don't even know what that means. It's so obtuse. I know what it means for Nike and it's a great marketing tagline, but that's not a vision. And so really honing in, the hardest part for me was honing in on that vision and truly understanding what that meant for us, meaning myself as a person and the business, which that's probably also a big slant too. And we preach it to our clients all the time, which is, this is E-Myth, 101, Michael Gerber, which is also part of EOS, which is your business is it's a vehicle for you. If you are serving your business, you've got it wrong. Your business should be serving you. So if you're not earning fair wage, meaning market rate, plus a rate of return on top of that, And I think that's a key miss for like everybody on the planet, at least in the small business space. It's like, oh, well, I make enough. It's like, well, do you make enough plus a return? Because if you just make enough, you should just be getting a job. I think really unpacking that was huge and ensuring that business truly was serving myself first. That then allowed me to create the freedom and space to build the team, do what we needed to, start creating that flow and the infrastructure that we needed. And that all started with the vision. Like that all started with a really strong vision around what we're going, what we're doing. It just set the stage for everything.
We're always touching into profit first type scenario there. I don't know if you've heard of that one. Very much kind of like gear your business up to be, give you what you need first as part of that process. Obviously, this journey's been it sounds like it's been an exciting journey.
For a chaos creator, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe not for people who like it organized and structured. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. What does the next 2 years look like for you?
Yeah, for us, that all ties back to our vision. So right now we are a team of 15. We're around 2 million Canadian in revenue. Recurring, so none of it is project-based. We don't do projects at all. I would actually like to be upwards of 10 in 3 to 5 years. So that means that we've got to be at least 30 to 40% growth rate every single year on average, which is a pretty lofty goal. You know, I've got very good optics around how we can do that in the next year or two. It becomes a little less clear on how do you get to that second stage, because now you're not relying on Kelvin and walking around and networking and finding referrals and now you're starting to get more into cold outreach, prospecting, and what that looks like. And we are already working on some of the systems and processes that we need to do that to then set the stage for what that could look like 2 to 3 years from now. But guess that what that all comes back to is the vision and knowing where we want to get to and the things that we have to start implementing today in order to actually execute down the road.
So it's really interesting. Are you your core sales and marketing person in the business then?
Right now. Yeah.
So I find that one of the biggest challenges, and this is not just the US, it's a challenge across the board, is a lot of business founders tend to be, maybe not always in the accountancy space, but in most businesses, they tend to be the person who has the vision for the business, but they're also the person who has to keep doing the sales and the marketing. And they're the ones that build the relationships really well. And they're passionate about the business, all that kind of stuff. So then you get to a point in business where replacing them becomes it's very expensive, to be honest, because they're probably one of the best people at doing it, right? So it becomes very expensive, but also there's a lot of trust and control challenges with that. I actually was speaking to one of our clients not that long ago, and they've gone down the route of saying they're allocating several £100,000. Basically, they've looked at what the wage would cost to replace the founder, who's also sales, 3 times that. Yeah. And they've said, we'll gamble that one of 3 hires will be good enough. But we're going to allocate that budget, because of where their vision is, because they're so clear about their vision. We're going to allocate the budget for that to make sure that we're going to give up two people's salary for a whole year for that, because we're expecting that we'll probably get it wrong 3 times, but one of those hopefully will be the right person to replace that leader of the business. That's a hell of a lot of, obviously it makes complete sense, but it's also a hell of a lot of, it's a high cost to make that move into that next stage. So it's going to be a really interesting journey.
Yep. So if you go back to Dan Martell and Buying Back Your Time, he's got a concept in there called the delegation ladder. And it's such an amazing tool because, you know, there's a lot of talk, I find, especially in the accounting industry, around you got to hire your COO, like your leadership first, you know, to help you delegate and do stuff. And it's not saying that's incorrect. It's just saying it's not the only way. Because when you read Dan Martell's book, he actually takes the exact opposite approach, which is it's shaped like a ladder. And at the very bottom is admin. And it comes back to you got different tasks that you're doing during your day. Some are $10 tasks an hour. Some are, I'm using dollars because I'm in North America. Some are 20, some are 50, some are 200, some are 1,000. And you should be, as leaders, you should be focusing on the higher value stuff and delegating out the lower level stuff. And so he would take the approach of when you're first starting out, you're doing it all. You're doing the whole ladder. Then you get your admin. So your admin comes off the plate. Then like he's got, I think it's sales and not sales. Sales is at the very top. Operations, I think, is second. And so then you need to start figuring out how you can do production, meaning in the accounting world, how can I get somebody else to do bookkeeping or tax returns, or, you know, me not doing the data punching, you know, that would be production. And he's got a very structured framework about how you move up the ladder. And the last two things are leadership and sales. And it just highlights how important those areas are and how careful you need to be around them. So coming to a place where you're testing out having two people replacing the founder truly makes sense to me, because it is such a high value area. I mean, the old adage, sales solve everything, right? So if you have no sales, you have no business. It's an extremely important area to consider. When we actually first start working with a lot of clients, we're financial people. One of the first areas we always try to challenge people is, do you have a sales process? That has nothing to do with financials outside of, are you bringing money in systematically? Because most people do not have that. And if they don't have that, it's very hard for them to operate from a position of safety. And so what I like to say is, usually when people are scared, operating from a position of fear, they have imperfect decisions, meaning they're not making logical decisions because they're scared. And so if you don't have money coming in the door, you're probably scared because it has so many cascading effects. So it's one of the first areas that you should probably look at as a business owner is, yes, it's going to be you doing it right now, but figure out a system and a process to do it and make it systematic, so that then you can start figuring out how you can get other people in the right seats to do the admin, the production, everything else up on the delegation ladder, until such time as we can get you to a point where we can get you out of the door sales, which could be things like, let's hire 2 or 3 people and see if one of them actually is good at it.
Takes off and does it. Yeah. It's hard to replace, isn't it? Listen, Kelvin, this has been fantastic. Are there any final thoughts that you think what people will be useful for people?
Yeah, no, I come back to, if you're looking at EOS from an accounting lens, I think it will resonate with a lot of people because it is more textbook based, meaning people in the accounting industry are typically not myself. They're typically a lot more integrator-ish, to use a EO term. And so the textbook will resonate with them. It's a great system. I think everybody should be doing it. And I think the main message from that is act on it. It's one thing to have the vision, but you also need to do the follow through with it too. And it's so key, because I think there's just a lot of practitioners out there. I think the stat is 95% or more, I think, of all practices in the world are less than $1 million or £1 million in turnover. And what that means to me is there's a lot of sole proprietors out there with 1 or 2 admins or 1 partner or 2 partners, and they're grinding it out. And what they don't have is a saleable asset. They've just got a partnership. So as soon as they pass away, their business value disappears. And so if you're looking for something different, if you're looking to build an asset, you need to look at an operating system like an EOS, because it'll help you create a sustainable business model over time.
It's amazing, Kelvin. Thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure speaking to you. So thanks everyone that have been listening to the podcast. Next week, we're going to be doing a people element, and we're joined by Chad Davis. We'll delve into that. Please feel free to...
Don't listen to that guy. Chad.
Please do listen to the rest of our episodes, and any feedback and comments or thoughts around this, we'd love to have them from you so we can input them into other episodes as well. Thanks very much for listening, and thanks for your time, Kelvin.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.